Over 60? Discover 3 surprising vegetables to avoid and 3 amazing ones that transform your health. Ruth Johnson stood in her kitchen, feeling the familiar weight of the recipe clutched in her hand. The air was thick with the sweet scent of chocolate chip cookies, but rather than comfort, it filled her with unease. She had always prided herself on nourishing her family with hearty meals, but the latest health trends buried her in doubt. What if those tomatoes were doing more harm than good? She thought, recalling the article her granddaughter Mia had shown her. Each word rang like a bell, making her feel like a relic in a fast-moving world. Ruth glanced at the well-worn cookbook that had served her for decades. It felt heavy, an anchor tethering her to a past she wasn't sure she could hold on to as the summer sun streamed through the window. Ruth watched Mia, exuberant and full of newfound knowledge from her studies in nutrition, joyfully mix together a green smoothie, duty driving her to contribute. Ruth's heart swelled with love for the young woman, but her stomach knotted. With each suggestion Mia made, from swapping sweet potatoes for zucchini to using quinoa instead of rice, Ruth felt an invisible chasm expanding between them. Could she embrace these changes while still being the matriarch who had nurtured her family with classic comfort foods? The thought twisted in her mind like a vine wrapping tightly around her heart, squeezing out her certainty. Jake strode into the kitchen, his brow furrowing at the sight of the kale Mia was cutting. Ruth, you don't need to keep alternating everything. These fancy ingredients won't replace what's worked for generations. The tension crackled in the cool air, laced with resentment and fear of losing the family traditions that Jake held dear. Ruth felt her breath hitch. She had long ago embraced the role of the nurturer, but now she felt fragmented, trying to please both her son and her granddaughter as the two clashed. The kitchen that was once a sanctuary for laughter now echoed with conflict. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Ruth could feel sweat bead on her forehead as Jake's voice replayed in her mind. Hadn't she spent her whole life creating a haven for her family? Each recipe was a thread woven into their shared story, but now, she sensed those threads unraveling. She was caught between her yearning to uphold tradition and her desire to step into a healthier future. Her heart warred with her mind in a battle she felt ill-equipped to fight. Was she really just a shadow of the woman she used to be, struggling to keep pace amid the bright ideas Mia brought to the table? In that moment, she looked at the vibrant produce laid before her, a spectrum of colors representing new potential, and it felt like staring down a precipice, with no clear path to guide her. As Mia beamed about the benefits of a plant-based diet, Ruth's confidence wavered, her hands trembling as they hovered over the unfamiliar ingredients. Could she dare to experiment without losing the essence of who she was? With each heartbeat echoing in her ears, she sensed that the answers lay just beyond her reach. Would embracing change banish her from the family's culinary legacy, or could she meld the past and present into something beautiful? And there it was, the simmering unease, threatening to break open. Ruth felt herself hanging at a crossroads. Would she choose to embrace uncertainty, or remain chained to the traditions that defined her? As that thought loomed in the air, the kitchen fell silent, but the tempest of emotional contradiction inside her roared louder than ever, leaving her hanging in the balance of the unresolved chaos that surrounded her. Ruth inhaled deeply, trying to clear her mind, but the delicious aroma of cookies mixed with the harsh reality of her situation. She set the recipe aside and glanced at the bowl of kale Mia was crafting into something vibrant. The sight of her granddaughter's enthusiasm sparked something within her, a flicker of curiosity mingled with a reluctant admiration. Was there a way to embrace the contemporary without forsaking the cherished memories her cooking represented? How about we try that smoothie together? Mia suggested, her eyes bright with anticipation. Beneath the surface, Ruth felt a swell of resentment strangling the budding curiosity. Why was this young woman so adamant about casting aside their culinary history for the latest trend? It's just a drink, Grandma. You can still make your cookies. This could be a fun way to add something new. The optimism in Mia's voice simultaneously soothed and stung. Ruth's hands fell to her sides, her knuckles white as she fought against the urge to don the armor of resentment. Instead, she decided to confront her fears. What if we made a hybrid of both? She said, her voice surprising even herself. The thought was audacious, a personal leap of faith. We could have a smoothie alongside the cookies. Mia's face lit up, her eagerness contagious. That sounds perfect. Let us create something that honors the past, but also embraces the future. As Mia gathered ingredients, Ruth felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease, if only slightly. Could this be the beginning of blending the old with the new, or was she still grasping at straws? As they worked together, Ruth started to feel the rhythm of the kitchen return, each ingredient an avenue to explore creativity rather than a battleground. She poured almond milk into the blender, and the sound of it whirling prompted her to chuckle. I still can't picture your grandfather biting into a kale chip, she teased, the laughter breaking the unease. Mia snorted, her laughter infectious. Perhaps not, but he would have happily drank down a fruity smoothie if it meant trying something new with you. The playful banter quickly turned the kitchen into a haven of shared purpose. For the first time since the conflict had ignited, Ruth began to see a way forward, an opportunity not just for sustenance, but for connection. After whipping the smoothie, they poured it into tall glasses, vibrant green with hints of berry peeking through. Ruth held her glass aloft, a tinge of pride swelling in her chest. To new beginnings, she declared, surprised by the warmth of her sincerity. To new beginnings, Mia echoed, her eyes shining with newfound respect for her grandmother. They clinked their glasses together, and for the first time, Ruth felt the weight of her cookbooks lift just a little, like a veil being drawn back to reveal a bright horizon. Yet, amid the triumph, there was still uncertainty lurking. Jake emerged from the living room, catching sight of their celebration. "What is this?" he asked, suspicion etched on his brow. The moment hung heavy with unspoken challenges. Could he accept this shift, or would he see it as an end to the traditions he held dear? Ruth's stomach knotted again, a reminder that the road to reconciliation was fraught with potential pitfalls. Would Jake understand that nurturing a family meant evolving with it? Or would the ache of change drive a wedge further between them? As Jake approached, Ruth sensed the looming confrontation. The card she had played by agreeing to try something new now felt like a double-edged sword. The kitchen's lively energy shifted, and the potential for growth seemed to teeter precariously on the edge of the unknown. Would this new adventure unite her family or fracture it further? In her heart, she knew the moment of truth was about to arrive. Ruth's heart raced as Jake drew closer, the weight of her newfound resolve clashing with the anxiety gnawing at her insides. It was one thing to experiment with Mia. It was another reality entirely to face Jake and see his reaction. He stood, arms crossed, studying her like a puzzle he hadn't yet solved. The openness she'd felt moments before seemed fragile now, threatened by the heavy silence in the room. "What is this all about?" Jake's voice was steady but edged with an undertone of skepticism. Each word he spoke felt like a tightrope over a chasm of potential conflict. Ruth's throat tightened as she considered her words. In that silence, she faced an internal dilemma. How much of her vulnerability would she let show? She wanted to explain, to pull back the layers of her emotions, but fear of rejection held her words captive. "It's just a smoothie, Jake," Mia chimed in, her joyful tone striking a contrast to his serious demeanor. "We thought it would be fun to try something new." The simplicity of Mia's words reverberated in Ruth's mind. Fun. Would Jake dismiss that as frivolous? Beneath her growing confidence was a twinge of guilt for the changes sweeping through her kitchen and, by extension, her life. "It's more than just a drink," Ruth finally managed, her voice calmer than she felt. "It's about blending past traditions with new ideas." She took a deep breath, tapping into the warmth she'd felt with Mia, looking her granddaughter in the eye for strength. "I think it could help us all, together." Jake's brow furrowed, his skepticism becoming tangible. "Together how? By abandoning what we've always done?" He challenged, his defenses rising as if he were bracing for a storm. The prospect of a shift in their family's culinary landscape stirred a quiet fear in him, one rooted in the possibility of losing connection. "No, not abandoning evolving," Ruth responded, surprising even herself with the fierceness of her tone. Our traditions are important, but they shouldn't cage us. We can celebrate what we've always loved, while also embracing new experiences. Jake's gaze faltered. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as if he was grappling not only with the concept of smoothies versus cookies, but also with the fear of change and what it signified for their family dynamics. Did he realize that Ruth, too, was struggling against a tide of uncertainty? What is next? You're going to start a vegan bakery? He quipped, but a trace of bitterness lingered in his voice. Her chest constricted at his words, the playful spirit they had just shared dissolving into tension. Jake, it's not about changing who we are, but enriching what we can become. The room felt thick with unprocessed emotions as Jake shifted, his resistance apparent. Yet beneath the skepticism, Ruth sensed a flicker of vulnerability in him. Could embracing innovation be a bridge rather than a barrier? Their eyes locked, a moment of silent communication passing between them. Ruth's determination burgeoned. She wished for Jake to see the potential for unity within their evolving identities, if only he could let go of the fear holding him back. Maybe we can compromise, he finally said, though the edge in his voice remained. Compromise. It was a step, yet still far from acceptance. Mia took a step closer to galvanize the moment. How about we all try the smoothie together? If it's awful, we can always go back to our beloved cookies. Ruth chuckled at her granddaughter's playful spirit, but the humor didn't curtail the gravity of her challenge. As they prepared to take that leap into the unknown, Ruth's heart hardened with resolve. The stakes had risen higher than she ever imagined. Through this family confrontation, she could either cement foundational connections or see them tear apart. Keeping her gaze locked with Jake's, she resolved silently to show him the path to renewal. But was Jake ready to see it too? Or would he remain anchored in the safety of the past, even if it meant losing more than he realized? Each moment hung delicately in the air, and Ruth felt the intricate dance of hope and fear tingling at her fingertips. The next step was crucial. Would they rise together or retreat into their respective corners? The inevitable decision loomed, and as the first sip of the smoothie approached, Ruth couldn't shake the sense that whatever choice they made would define them moving forward. Would this blend of old and new bring them closer, or would it sever the threads tying them to their history? Mia's bright suggestion hung in the air, vibrant yet precarious. Ruth could sense her heart thumping, caught between the urge to protect her family's legacy and the flicker of excitement for what lay ahead. She glanced at Jake, whose tight posture belied a storm of conflicting emotions swirling just beneath the surface. Would he embrace this moment as a pivotal turning point, or would he see it merely as another episode in the familiar script of their lives? With a slight nod from Mia, they moved to the counter, preparing the ingredients. Ruth's hands trembled slightly as she sliced through the fruit and vegetables, an anxiety lacing her motions. What if this was a terrible idea? Could a simple smoothie trigger a deeper transformation in their family dynamics? Each slice felt monumental, weighted with possibilities. Here, let me help, Mia offered, stepping in with cheerful efficiency. Ruth watched her granddaughter blend the ingredients, the vibrant colors whirling together into a vivid green mix. It was a striking visual analogy for the familial mingling of past and future. Jake leaned against the counter, his arms still crossed, but a subtle shift in his demeanor hinted at curiosity rather than outright resistance. Ruth seized the moment, emboldened by Mia's infectious optimism. You know, it's funny how one small change can initiate a rethinking of so many things, she said, her tone lighter this time. Like how we always have cookies after dinner. Mia piped up, grinning widely. A smoothie could be a fun new thing, right, Dad? Jake sighed, glancing at his daughter before turning his gaze to Ruth. You're onto something, I'll give you that. But it won't be easy to replace the traditions. They're deep-rooted for a reason. Deep-rooted. The phrase resonated within Ruth, triggering an inner reflection. She understood all too well the constraints of tradition. Hadn't she herself leaned on those very foundations as comfort, hesitating to wade into the uncharted waters of change? I get that. But remember, Jake, change doesn't mean losing our history. It's about growing. It's about adding flavor to what we already have. The blender roared to life, drowning out the tension in the room momentarily. Ruth took a breath, centering herself in the whirlwind of emotions. What Jake needed to understand is that she wasn't seeking to erase history. She was striving to enhance it. Would he be open to that perspective? After what felt like an eternity, Mia poured glistening green smoothies into glasses, the frothy surface shimmering under the kitchen lights. Tada, ready for the big taste test? All right, let us do this, Jake finally said, his voice strong but unfamiliar, a hint of shared adventure dancing alongside the fear. As each of them raised their glasses, like a ceremonial toast to the possibilities ahead, Ruth's heart fluttered with hope. Would this moment fortify their bond or fracture it further? On three, Mia began, her excitement contagious. 1, 2, 3. Cheers. They sipped. The flavors exploded, a blend of sweetness and zest, surprising and delightful. Ruth's eyes sparkled with joy as she looked from Mia to Jake. Their reactions mirrored her own exhilaration. It's good, isn't it? She hoped to see acceptance gleaming in Jake's eyes. But as he swallowed, Ruth noticed the flicker again, a hint of confusion mixed with something deeper. In his expression, she read a silent question. What else was changing? Jake replaced his glass on the counter, a frown pulling at the corners of his mouth. It's not bad, he conceded, but the wariness in his tone returned all too quickly. But what does this mean for us? What else are we blending together? Ruth's stomach nodded, confronted with an unexpected follow-up, the punchline of her desire and fear mashed together. Change rippled through their dynamics in ways she hadn't predicted. This, she started, gripping her glass tightly, is just the beginning. What I want is for us to embrace change together, even when it's uncomfortable. Silence loomed over the kitchen, thick with unspoken thoughts. Jake's eyes held hers, revealing a battlefield of uncertainty and the flicker of vulnerability she hoped to cultivate. Could this be the turn toward acceptance, or was it merely an initial taste of a much larger dish yet to be served? They stood at an emotional crossroads, and as Ruth's thoughts drifted to endless possibilities, she realized that facing Jake's hesitance was only part of the equation. What would happen when confronted not with traditions, but with the emotions that held them all back? And at that moment, as their journey began taking shape, she made a silent promise to herself. She would uncover the depths of her own fears. The path ahead crackled with both uncertainty and excitement, and she was ready to face whatever dawned next. Would Jake follow, or would the remnants of the past yanking him back prove too strong? The kitchen buzzed with a tense, yet hopeful energy as Ruth watched Mia dart around, wiping down the counter and gathering the empty glasses. She could sense Jake still processing their shared moment, his internal conflict painting a vivid picture of uncertainty on his face. It struck her how daunting that weight of expectation could be. Change, though invigorating, also felt like an unraveling of the tightly woven fabric that had defined their family for so long. Can we talk about what just happened? Jake finally broke the silence, his arms now resting at his sides, posture softening. Ruth's heart skipped the breakthrough she yearned for, was on the verge of manifesting, but she also recognized the potential for backlash. Of course, talk away, she replied, her voice barely concealing the excitement thrumming beneath the surface. I mean, what does embracing change really look like? His tone had shifted from defensive to curious, which ignited a spark of optimism within Ruth. Is it just this ridiculous smoothie thing? It's a metaphor, she asserted, leaning on the counter. It's about mixing the good with the unexpected. What if we consider this as a way to reassess how we do everything? To find a middle ground? Mia, quick to seize the moment, interjected, like, maybe we can have smoothie nights instead of cookie nights. They can be fun too. Jake's lips quirked in a half-smile, yet his brow remained furrowed. Sure, but what happens when we want to celebrate? Are we going to toast with kale shakes instead of cake? What if, Ruth countered, amazed at her own resolve, we reframe celebrations? We can have both. There is space for tradition and transformation. Jake studied her with a hard gaze, as though he were trying to unearth something buried deep within her words. The silence hummed like an electric wire, throbbing with possibility and pushback. Ruth could almost hear the wheels of his mind turning, his own fears playing out behind that thoughtful stare. Why do you want this so badly? He asked bluntly. What is pushing you? It was a raw question, and Ruth felt its edges digging into her self-awareness. Why did she need to reinvent their reality so fiercely? Because, Jake, I don't want us to become static. I don't want our family to dim with time. I want us to thrive, to evolve with each other rather than grow apart. His expression softened then, unraveling some of the tension that had coiled tightly within Ruth. I get that, but what if I'm not? What if I don't want to be part of this new recipe? Ruth wondered if he would even comprehend the depth of what he was suggesting. The thought of him pulling away, retreating to the safety of creature comforts and habitual living, sent a pang through her. As much as she fought for a harmonious evolution, the possibility of confronting rejection chillingly loomed. I hope you do, she replied sincerely, but if you don't, I will need to find a way to thrive anyway. Their eyes locked, the potential of confrontation flickering again, but this time, it was laced with understanding instead of accusation. In Jake, Ruth recognized a man who, though fearful, was battling with the very real fear of losing something he had held close for years. Mia, sensing the gravity of their exchange, suggested a different route. Hey, how about we make a less guilty dessert? We could experiment. We could blend things together. See, Ruth said, her heart lightening as Jake chuckled at their daughter's inventive spirit. We're already blending ideas. But as laughter echoed lightly against the kitchen walls, Ruth felt a deep disquiet settle into her core. Could humor distract from the heavier conversations that lay ahead? What does it mean to blend our lives, our family dynamics? She mused aloud, half to herself. And what more is there to discover? The weight of anticipation pressed down around them. She felt the pull of unexplored territories beckoning unpacked emotions, past grievances, and long-hidden dreams resurfacing in their collective consciousness. What lay beneath the surface of Jake's hesitations? Was he fully aware of the fears weighing him down? Ruth inhaled deeply, resolving to explore the threads of their journey further. She recognized this was only the start, each twist revealing more complexities. Yet she remained uncertain whose hand would grasp the next significant piece of their puzzle. Would Jake dare to look at the unfurling tapestry of emotions and family ties? And if he chose to look away, would Ruth's determination to face her own fears be enough to reclaim the narrative of their lives? Each moment of tension brought them closer to critical truths, and she could only hope that anticipation would lead to a deeper understanding. The next step was waiting, and the horizon shimmered with promise. Would they draw closer or drift apart in the currents of this evolving journey? Ruth felt a rush of adrenaline as she took in Jake's half-smile, a flicker of hope igniting within her. Nevertheless, the laughter from Mia began to wane, leaving behind a silence thick with unprocessed feelings. It was clear that this moment, though lightened by Mia's fervor, skimmed over deeper currents longing for exploration. Maybe we should focus on what each of us needs, she suggested carefully, shifting her stance to face Jake more directly. What do you think you need to feel secure in this change? Jake shrugged, avoiding her gaze. I don't know. Not every change leads to something good. Sometimes, it feels like stepping into the unknown without a safety net. Isn't that what life is? Ruth asked, her voice a bit firmer now. Isn't every new day a leap into the unknown? You've taken risks before. You're a fundamentally brave person, even if your fear holds you back now. He considered this, brow furrowing again as the battle between his desire for stability and his need for evolution played out over his features. Bravery doesn't always feel like it's enough when the stakes are family, Ruth. What if we lose ourselves trying to chase improvement? Ruth felt the sharpness of his words reverberate within her. It became increasingly clear that their definitions of loss might be vastly different. We could just be trading one version of ourselves for another, Jake. There's a richness in the evolution if we allow it. That sounds good in theory, but what if I don't want a new version of me? His eyes flashed with a hint of panic buried beneath layers of sarcasm. What if the current version of you isn't enough for you, though? She leaned closer, feeling the charged air crackle with vulnerability. What if there are hidden parts of you that want to thrive too? You just haven't let them out yet. As Jake pondered, Ruth sensed the urgency of this moment. She remembered him at his passionate best. The man who once enlisted in a local theater project. The man who enthused about the families they could help with his job. She saw a small glimmer of that man in the way he hesitated, the way he wrestled with his fear and frustration. Maybe we could start small, Ruth offered. a thought taking root in her mind. How about we set up and experiment a trial run where we try blending the old with the new? We can start at home. Let us have one change a week. Jake looked intrigued yet uncertain. And if it goes sideways? Then we reassess, pivot, and reflect on what we learn, Ruth stated earnestly. That's the beauty of growth. No one has to get it perfect immediately. It's like experimenting with a smoothie, right? If a combination isn't working, you return to the counter and mix things differently. Mia leaped in again, her excitement palpable. Can we have a smoothie to celebrate it all? Yes. Ruth laughed, glad for the moment of levity. Then she turned to Jake, determined to hold his gaze. Could we try it? 1 week of uncharted experiences? He inhaled slowly, uncertainty still dancing behind his eyes. Fine. A week. But no kale. If there's no cake, I'm out. Deal, she replied, her heart racing with both anticipation and fear. Knowing the road wouldn't be straightforward as they wrapped things up, Ruth felt a surge of energy within herself. Today had been a turning point, even if the group effort was still tentative at best. With Mia bustling around happily, the kitchen began to reclaim its vibrant atmosphere, but beneath it all, a quiet apprehension rested. The challenge stood before Ruth. How to keep the dialogue open, inviting even the chaotically hidden aspects of their family dynamics to unfurl. She recognized that confronting the unexamined fears and desires wasn't a linear path. It would require tenacity to navigate those emotional waters, especially where Jake was concerned. What other layers stood between them, unacknowledged and unresolved? Would Jake confront his hesitations as they dared to explore this experiment, or would he hold back, shackled by past habits? As night draped over their home, Ruth's mind began to whirl with strategies and potential pitfalls. Her resolve strengthened. She understood that only through their proactive collaboration could they uncover meaningful insights about themselves and each other. But as she prepared for their first day of transformation, a gnawing question lingered. Was Jake even ready to dive into the depths of what that could mean for both of them? The heart of their family's future hung in the balance, waiting to unfold. A quiet challenge echoed across the kitchen spaces they shared. Would the results mark the beginning of a newfound connection or reveal shadows they were not yet ready to face? Ruth woke up the next morning with a vague sense of unease swirling near her stomach. The dawn light flooded her room, but felt hardly welcoming. Today was not about regressing into routine. It was about embarking on a new path, and that realization felt both thrilling and ominous. She rolled out of bed and caught her reflection in the mirror, scrutinizing the determination that danced behind her tired eyes. The previous day had felt momentous, but the reality of change now loomed over her like a dark cloud. After a rushed breakfast with Mia, Ruth turned her attention to Jake. He lingered at the kitchen counter, his fingers tracing the uneaten toast. The weight of his earlier skepticism hung between them, heavy with lingering doubts. So where do we start? He finally asked, his voice low and somewhat defeated. Let us think about something small and manageable, Ruth suggested, the words pushing past her uncertainty. How about dinner? What if we cook together? You choose the recipe. Jake's eyes flickered with disinterest, but he nodded, probably more out of obligation than enthusiasm. Sure, I'll pick something easy, he muttered, putting a damper on her vibrant vision. Ruth swallowed her disappointment, recognizing she needed to foster engagement in him without pushing too hard. Instead, she decided to leverage his interest, steering the conversation toward ingredients he enjoyed. How about those tacos you love? We could experiment with vegetarian options. You know, play with spices and that kind of thing. He hesitated, a shadow of thought crossing his expressions. Vegetarian tacos? Tap into that whole new version of myself you mentioned yesterday? A hint of sarcasm lingered in his tone, but there was also a flicker of curiosity. Exactly, she retorted. Let us transform the ordinary. Let us use it as a way to step out of comfort zones not just for today, but for the entire week. Their plan fell into place hesitantly, but for Ruth, it breathed life into old dreams of family togetherness, laughter, and exploration. She marked the evening's venture in her mind like a promise. However, her heart thudded with the knowledge that one hesitant taco night would not be a panacea for their deeper rifts. What if he still felt cornered by the push for personal growth? What if comfort trumped curiosity, Throughout the day, Ruth immersed herself in work, but her thoughts wandered back to Jake. Would he engage more fully, or would he pull back, guarded by fears and the shackles of his past? The workplace became a blurred backdrop as her mind replayed their conversations, dissecting every nuance meticulously. Grasping for answers to unasked questions mid-afternoon, Jake called, breaking her train of thought. "Hey, can we adjust our plans?" Her heart raced. "Sure, what is on your mind?" "I've been thinking about what you said last night," he began, a hint of tension evident even over the phone. "About hidden parts of ourselves. Maybe we could try not just cooking together, but trying some new activities. I know we've got the cooking down, but I could use a bit more adventure." Ruth paused, her stomach flipping. Adventure? The word felt electrifying, born of shared risk rather than individual negotiation. Was he beginning to embrace the experiment's potential to meld their lives? "That sounds like a great idea. What do you have in mind?" "I'm not sure yet," he admitted, uncertainty creeping back into his tone. "I just think maybe it's good to stretch ourselves, even if it's uncomfortable." Genuine encouragement washed over her. "Jake, this is huge. Confronting the ordinary is the name of the game. We need those discomforts to understand ourselves better." With a lighter spirit, Ruth felt the pendulum of their journey swing toward possibility. They discussed the evening over lunch, and Jake seemed increasingly engaged, the spark igniting a connection she hoped would permeate deeper layers of their relationship. As the sun dipped low, however, anxiety resurfaced, a spider weaving doubt beneath her excitement. Tonight's endeavor could nurture or fracture their fragile trust. How far could they delve into this unfamiliar territory? With each passing minute, tension layered on her resolve. What unforeseen challenges might lurk ahead, waiting to confront their newfound courage? Would their collaboration cultivate growth or expose deeper fissures? The clock ticked closer to dinner, and Ruth's anticipation fizzled and sparked in equal measures. She took a deep breath, holding her nerves steady. They were at the precipice of exploration, teetering on the edge of transformation. But the overarching question loomed. Would they rise to the occasion, taking that first real step into something vital, or falter beneath the weight of their unresolved past? Ruth stood in the kitchen, surrounded by an array of fresh ingredients, her heart pounding with anticipation. She glanced at the clock and felt a new urge within her, a determination to not only make tonight's dinner a success, but to also step firmly into the unknown territory that Jake had suggested. She was teetering on the edge of a personal breakthrough, and the gravity of change urged her forward. The recipe for vegetarian tacos lay spread open on the counter, but her thoughts drifted to the deeper meaning behind their culinary experiment. Cooking together could serve as a bridge not just to new flavors and techniques, but to opening up vital conversations that had long simmered beneath the surface. The prospect electrified her, pushing her anxiety to the back of her mind. Moments later, the sound of Jake's footsteps broke her reverie. He entered, uncertainty draped around him like a heavy cloak. "Smells good," he remarked, eyeing the spread. Though the words were light, Ruth could sense the hesitation in his voice. She noted his posture, shoulders slightly rounded, hands tucked into pockets as if guarding himself from the weight of the evening ahead. "What do we start with?" she asked, intentionally keeping her tone upbeat. She wanted to invite him in, to engage him in a way that felt personal while easing the tension that held them hostage. Jake shuffled toward the counter, flicking through the recipe. "Maybe we should get the toppings ready first," he suggested, a hint of anticipation creeping into his voice. Ruth smiled, noticing the small spark of enthusiasm she had seen earlier. Encouraged, she set aside her worries about the emotional complexities lurking in the shadows. As they chopped and stirred, banter began to flow. They laughed over missteps, a carrot that slipped from Jake's grasp, a missed cilantro leaf, and for a moment, the kitchen transformed from a battleground of tension into a lively workspace. Ruth watched as his eyes lit up when they began to experiment with spices, playfully sneaking spoonfuls of cumin and chili powder into the mixture. It seemed the act of creation was providing Jake an avenue for self-exploration he hadn't previously known. "Maybe we should try adding a bit of this," he urged, pulling out a container of smoked paprika. The suggestion surprised Ruth pleasantly. It was as if he was coming into his own identity, a new Jake emerging, brimming with confidence and collaboration. Yet, Even as the connection strengthened, a nagging thought crept into her mind. Was it too early to think they had turned a corner? Would the delicious tacos truly herald a transformation, or was it simply a facade, a single meal posing as a deeper solution? Such questions ballooned inside her, pushing her to remain cautious. The cooking culminated in a colorful spread on the table, and as they sat down, a sense of pride bubbled within Ruth. "We really did this together," she said, her voice trembling slightly with suppressed emotion, straddling the line between vulnerability and hope. "I guess we did," Jake replied, taking a tentative bite. The flavors ignited a gust of surprise on his face. For a moment, there was nothing but the joy of creation, eclipsing the shadows of their past. But as they transitioned to deeper conversations, she could feel the unease building again. The smiles masked deeper questions. "So, what else can we try together?" "You mentioned adventure," she prompted, her heart racing as she ventured deeper into unfamiliar waters. Jake paused, his expression growing contemplative. "I've been thinking about that. I'm just not sure what I can do. What if I freeze up?" His vulnerability laid bare before her, echoing her own fears. The warmth of the evening shifted, and Ruth felt the weight of his words. Was it her role to reassure him, or to push him toward confronting his insecurities? What adventures lay ahead instead of a safe retreat into comfort? Tension hung between them, electric and alive, and she knew this night was just the beginning. They were at a crossroads, a choice to either unveil their hidden potentials or retreat into the shadows of their past perceptions. As they exchanged worried glances and hesitant laughter, Ruth understood that beneath the surface of their culinary experiment lay questions profound enough to alter the course of their relationship forever. What awaited them on this new path, and could they grasp the courage to walk it together, side by side? The prospect of discovery loomed, tantalizing and daunting, and Ruth felt construction and destruction intertwining. Could they dismantle the walls they had built? Would he plunge into his greatness? And what surprising revelations awaited them both? With a nervous thrill tickling her spine, she looked into Jake's eyes. What if adventure means more than just trying new foods? What if it pushes us to do something completely out of our comfort zones? His brow furrowed, doubt creeping back into his gaze. She knew they stood on the brink of something transformative. The question hung in the air, weaving through their meal, challenging the very essence of their shared journey. Would they embrace the unknown, or let fear dictate their choices once again? Ruth sat back in her chair, her mind racing. The clatter of dishes faded into the background, but the weight of Jake's doubts felt all-consuming. If she wanted to see progress, she needed to lead by example, thrust herself into vulnerability, and show him that stepping outside their comfort zones could yield transformation. Was she ready for that? With a surge of determination, she chose her words carefully. What if adventure means taking that leap? What if you could surprise yourself? Her voice, steady yet infused with encouragement, hung like a held breath between them. Jake regarded her, his uncertainty still palpable. She sensed his internal struggle, an echo of her own. The thought of fear paralyzed them both, yet it was up to her to ignite the fire they so desperately needed. "Maybe we could plan a day trip somewhere," she suggested, her heart racing at the prospect of proposing something more spontaneous. "What if I can't handle it? What if it becomes overwhelming?" He responded, anxiety flashing in his eyes. "You won't know until you try," she insisted, her voice unwavering. With each word, she tugged at the threads of his hesitation. "This could be the kind of experience that changes everything, revealing sides of us we didn't know existed." He sighed, staring down at the remnants of their dinner. "I don't want to fail again." "It's not about failure, Jake. It's about discovery. And frankly, if you're looking to expand who you are, you need to embrace the possibility of stumbling." Ruth could see the wheels turning in his mind, could feel the tension balancing itself between trepidation and curiosity. After a long silence, he spoke, almost shyly. "What would we even do? Just drive around aimlessly?" "No, let us make it a plan," she proposed, excitement bubbling up inside her. "We could pick a destination, something engaging. Maybe a hike, or even a cooking class." Jake's brow lifted slightly, intrigued. The notion of exploring something he had never done before stirred the air. Cooking class? That little spark of enthusiasm was undeniable now. "Exactly. We could learn something new together, push our limits, see where it takes us." The possibilities sent a thrill through her, igniting a refreshing sense of hope. Each option felt like a step toward dismantling their stagnant routine. Jake hesitated, the joy of their meal curdling into a conflicting potion of excitement and doubt. But what if I freeze up in front of people? What if I'm just not good at it? Ruth reached across the table, her hand brushing against his. You can't expect to hit a home run every time. The joy is in the process, in being messy and imperfect. She was speaking to herself now, just as much as she was to him. With no guarantee of success, the prospect of taking that first step still felt exhilarating. He looked over the remnants of their dinner, then met her gaze. I guess taking risks could be part of the adventure. Huh? Absolutely. It's all about breaking out of what we know. As she smiled at him, she felt her own fear teetering on the edge of that same precipice. It was time for both of them to embrace the unknown. Their conversation lingered, weaving new threads of connection as they began to identify what this adventure could become. In sharing their fears so openly, they created a space for solidarity amidst their insecurities. The more they discussed, the more Ruth could sense shifts within Jake. He was balancing on the brink of change as they pieced together a loose outline for their proposed excursion. A shared enthusiasm filled the air. All the while, a subtle doubt simmered beneath the surface, a knowledge that the real challenge loomed ahead. Jake stood abruptly, grounding the moment in its reality. Okay, maybe I could get behind a cooking class and taking that trip. Just I might need some time to really think it through. What is there to think about? She challenged gently, yet beneath her playful tone, Ruth's heart thumped heavily. Were they ready to face the uncharted territory of their relationship, to fully expose themselves to new challenges and perspectives? It's one day, one experience. He lifted his brow with playful resolve. You better keep your enthusiasm on a leash. I might just have to keep pace with you. I'll be right beside you. We'll tackle this together. Yet, as they discussed logistics and made tentative plans, Ruth suddenly wondered if they truly understood the scope of their decision. What emerged for each of them? Would this plunge into the unknown unveil buried talents, or further exacerbate their fears? The mere thought sent ripples of unease washing over her. Not only were they facing challenges together, but their respective growth trajectories would intertwine irrevocably. A moment of deep introspection fell over their conversation, igniting new questions. Were they really ready to prioritize each other's growth, risking potential discomfort for greater connections? Ruth's pulse quickened, knowing they were at a decisive crossroads. The reality of change was a powerful force, one that could reshape them entirely. With a deep breath, she turned to Jake. So are you in? Are you willing to take this leap with me? The question lingered, trembling in the charged air, waiting for his response. Ruth stood in the kitchen, reflecting on the profound journey they had embarked upon. She blinked away the remnants of doubt hanging in the air. Now was the moment to embrace the newfound adventure. The warmth of the previous night filled her with resolve, reminding her of the first tentative steps toward their evolution as a family. The memory of their meal still shimmered in her mind, the laughter, the unexpected delight of successfully concocting something together, the vibrant flavors rising above the tension that had burdened them for so long. It was in that moment of culinary collaboration that Ruth recognized an essential truth. Bridging the old with the new didn't erode their identity. Instead, it enriched their lives. Determined to solidify this growth, Ruth turned to Jake, who leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So, where do we go from here? Her voice was calm, reflecting her inner clarity. She watched his expression shift from hesitation to a subtle glimmer of intrigue. We could finalize our plans for this day trip, he replied, an encouraging note creeping into his tone. Finding the right destination could set the tone for everything else. Ruth felt her heart leap. Yes, and let us consider how we can incorporate cooking or even a local farmer's market into our day, she suggested eagerly, eyes sparkling with anticipation. It can connect us to the community and provide a chance to learn, explore flavors, and perhaps discover something new about ourselves. As they continued to brainstorm, enthusiasm built like excited bubbles breaking free. Jake shared thoughts about hiking trails and scenic routes, each suggestion nudging them closer to collective excitement. Ruth basked in the growing closeness, knowing they were building something special. But she also understood the undercurrents of discomfort, those internal questions still simmering beneath the surface. As they drew close to finalizing the trip, she took a deep breath, wanting to ensure they were both honored in their fears. "Jake, I realize this adventure might be daunting for you. What are your concerns?" A fleeting shadow crossed his face. "I guess my worry is about anticipating the unknown. What if we face a situation that requires more than what we signed up for? What if it's overwhelming? Then we take it as it comes," she reassured him gently, her conviction unwavering. "Each moment is an opportunity for us to learn together. We won't have to tackle anything we're not ready for. It's about embracing growth, however messy it may be." Jake's gaze softened, the fear still present, but mingling with cautious hope. "I suppose that's the charm of this whole thing, a leap of faith. Together." "Exactly. And together, we can take these little risks, experimenting with our aspirations, savoring those surprises along the way." As they spoke, the emotional burden of past conflicts began to lift ever so slightly. Ruth could sense Jake letting go, allowing the possibilities of the future to seep into their present. This new dynamic felt liberating and electric, stirring a confidence she hadn't fully realized had been dormant. Days flew by like a blur of excitement leading up to their trip. Attention to detail fueled Ruth's preparations. Versatile snacks, a playlist to keep spirits high, recipes researched for improvisational cooking, and possible local markets on the itinerary. With each task, she found herself invigorated, accessing pieces of her identity that felt long buried. Finally, the day arrived. Sunlight poured through the windows as Ruth stood by the door, ready and eager for the adventure. Jake stepped in beside her, his expression a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. Clinging to the spirit of exploration, they began their journey, and the car filled with light conversation and laughter that had once been absent. They reached a stunning national park, an expanse of lush greenery undulating beneath a blue sky. As they stepped out, Ruth felt a rush of exhilaration as fresh air filled her lungs. "This is beautiful," Jake observed, glancing around as if unearthing a secret he had overlooked. "Yes, and it's our canvas for the day," Ruth replied, her heart swelling with pride. They embarked on a hike, the trail winding through trees that whispered stories of time and resilience. Nature's beauty mirrored their journey, reflecting growth, change, and discovery. As they walked, moments arose that ignited deeper conversations. A stray thought expressed, a personal anecdote revealed, tentative fears addressed. Ruth felt the distance gradually dissolving between them. Every step became a testament to the power of vulnerability. At one point, Jake paused at an overlook, captivated by the stunning vista before them. "This is incredible and a little scary," he admitted, looking back at Ruth with a mix of gratitude and acceptance. "We're both facing the unknown in the best way possible," Ruth responded, warming to the engagement unfolding. "It's all part of evolving together, like cooking experiments that expand our palates." With each shared moment, Ruth felt the tapestry of their lives weaving tighter, that initial thread of tension transforming into profound connection. They laughed as they prepared a picnic lunch right atop a beautiful ridge, and in that moment, amidst nature's grandeur, they both recognized how far they had come. As they sat enjoying their food, Ruth turned the conversation to their next culinary challenge, a cooking class they had picked out. "I can't wait. We'll be cooking alongside others learning just like us." Her excitement bubbled over. Jake's eyes lit up. "I can just imagine us stumbling through shared recipes or watching each other fail, and in the chaos, we'll figure it out." Ruth beamed, "And discover the joy of uncertainty. That's where the true flavor lies." As laughter enveloped them, Ruth sensed the full circle of their journey, embracing both the past they were built upon and the brave new flavors they were willing to try. The uncertainty was no longer an obstacle. It was an invitation to grow individually and collectively. Their adventure advanced not just their culinary endeavors, but catalyzed an emotional metamorphosis within both. Ruth returned that night with a heart buoyant from every new revelation, the satisfaction of watching relationship threads interlace tighter, more resilient than before. Jake's candor had fused with her willingness, and together, they had shared a monumental leap of faith, each now radiant under the glow of newfound understanding. In that transformed kitchen, A mixture of ingredients awaited, echoing the complexity of their journey. With every blend, every taste, they built something deeper than culinary creations, an enduring connection fueled by exploration, trust, and love. As she began preparing for dinner, Ruth couldn't help but smile, feeling the echoes of laughter and shared moments dancing around her. The future sparkled with possibility, reaffirming her belief. They were ready to tackle whatever came next. At that moment, Ruth understood that this was her achievement, the melding of tradition and innovation not just in what they cooked, but in who they were becoming together. Now, we invite you to join this journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is vital. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. What did Ruth and Jake's journey mean to you? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.